Welcome to the Creative Condition podcast, an ongoing series of conversations and considerations to help people understand and embrace their own unique creativity for fulfilling lives and brilliant careers. My name is Ben Tallon. I'm an illustrator and author, and I bring 16 years of creative industry experience working with the New York Times, The Guardian, the Premier League, and more. And I invite designers, artists, psychologists, scientists, coaches, athletes, sensitivity experts, and all kinds of thought leaders to help us broaden our knowledge of creativity. Creativity is a fundamental pillar of human happiness, a vital ingredient in the solutions to our problems, but so often misunderstood. The show is supported by founding sponsor and B Corp, Illustration X. Take a look at their stunning range of illustrators and animators at illustrationx.com. If you like the music for the show, it's by Dirty Freud, who you can listen to now on Spotify and all good music streaming services. How you doing, guys? Welcome back to The Creative Condition. My name is Ben Tallon. I am your host, and little bonus ball for you this week. I thought I would follow on from the episode The Power of Naughty, a reading from a chapter in The Creative Condition, and it's especially relevant given last week's chat with historian Professor Carl Chin, who's an MBE, for his fantastic work around the social classes, particularly the urban working class. Carl does so much great work in his books around the history of Birmingham, the real history of the Peaky Blinders, and of course his affection and belonging to the working class, much like myself, was something that we had a great chat about. And instead of writing an explicit piece about the working class, which I had started to do, I wanted to give you a reading from The Creative Condition because I think I say it better in the Power of Naughty chapter. There's something that really captures the struggle and the confusion in education that a lot of us go through from working class backgrounds when we are creative, when we are curious. And the academic system really doesn't cater for the brains we have, and therefore we end up feeling stupid and left marginalised and often tarred with the brush of being naughty or disruptive. Whereas the whole point, and what I opened that chapter with, was the consideration that if you replace the word naughty for any age of human being, but particularly for kids and adolescents, with the motivating factor for the naughty behaviour, then what you get is a brief for the parent or the superior or the education system. And it's about recognising the need at hand. So instead of naughty, it could be curious, it could be frustrated, it could be upset, it could be fearful. That's your brief. You have to address that. And if education can do that and the arts, then I think we have very powerful lived experiences from people with working class backgrounds. So that was my point, and that's why I read The Power of Naughty. And I wanted to follow on this week by reading Dirty Energy. So quickly, again, thank you to the sponsor for this bonus episode, illustrationx.com. They've been my founding sponsor for this show since day one. You can check out their global range of illustration and animation portfolios along with their great industry work over at illustrationx.com. And also a quick shout out to the Ukrainian Institute, who are helping the Ukrainian creative community connect worldwide during this horrific time of war, and you can help them achieve that by supporting their great artists and designers over at ui.org.ua. So what's been going on? I spoke to you on Wednesday, even yesterday, for the new podcast episode, and here is a bonus follow-up reading of chapter 32 from the Creative Condition book, Dirty Energy. It's digging deeper into the potential for that naughtiness or perceived naughtiness or rambunctious energy or rebellion, however you want to frame it. In that chapter, I profiled the likes of Jen Lucas, who is the head of home at Secure Children's Home for children who've fallen into the criminal justice system. I spoke to a long-time friend and close mate, Shane Gall, who is a brilliant web developer now, a really creative brain, deep into the maths of it all. And Shane was, as I described him, a little fucker at school. But it was when he found his way into coding and IT that he found real vitality, real belonging and purpose for his energy. And also Mac Ferrari and Jake 100 from Bike Storms, who turned kids who were at risk of getting into trouble into a vibrant wonderful social movement through riding bikes across London, and it's gone global now. So a really great story there too. So I sit down today with a cup of tea to get into this stuff. I've just received my Creative Condition Anatomy of Creativity map. By the time this episode goes out, you might see pictures of me with it. Very proud of that as a body of work. It's taken 10 years to pull together a framework for what amounts to creativity. Very excited to start rolling that out when I coach people, coming up and do some coaching pilot sessions at the moment as we speak throughout the summer. I've got my first booking for DNAD's Academy coming up in a few weeks' time. I'm very excited about that. I've got a workshop version. I'm taking it into businesses and agencies to break down the anatomy of creativity and work with staff to help them engage with theirs. And the map is a little keepsake. It's a worksheet and a map that I leave behind for them to continue the work from the session. So if that's of any interest, get in touch. You can get the Creative Condition book now at pentalonwriter.com. So I'm here with a brew. Forgive the rudeness. If you don't like a man drinking his tea on the air, then this show might not be for you. So here we go. Chapter 32 from the Creative Condition, Dirty Energy. During the first UK lockdown, I challenged adults who complained about the groups of teenagers we saw roaming the streets. It was illegal, and it would be hard to argue that it wasn't immoral. It created a sense of alarm for those who were shielding or who had vulnerable loved ones because of the threat that this rogue socialising might keep infection rates high. So the complaints are more than justified. But the reason I called for more empathy and understanding of nuance was that I saw the next generation of our society clinging to something vital to their social development, fighting for the freedom to meet their animalistic needs. Where does a person who lacks guidance start to gain a greater understanding of self? There's no manual, and even when parents are willing to spend the time trying, the most committed will struggle to truly understand themselves. Childhood recreation and the balance of socialising, alone time, steer and freedom are essential building blocks. But when these are not afforded to people in early life, it requires mentors to step in. It's easy to forget just how formative the early teenage years are to our life education. On a basic, primal level, young people have a lot of energy, both mental and physical. And if it cannot be channeled somewhere positive, the risk of getting into trouble heightens because destructive energy mutates into rebellion and misbehaviour. They become vulnerable to falling in with people who might exploit their naivety and put that energy to nefarious uses. For those from less than stable family units, lockdowns sentence them to a period out in the social cold without any interaction. In the life of a teenager, 1.5 years is a gargantuan amount of time and represents a serious loss of developmental activity, creativity and self-expression. During the summer holidays, I spend a significant chunk of each morning's dog walk picking up empty Coca-Cola cans and McDonald's packaging from round park benches to put in the bin. This is no revelation, but we know more than we ever used to how nutrition, as covered earlier, plays a huge part in mental well-being, and I've heard stories of teachers having to bring in bananas and bread if they're to stand any chance of hooking the attention of young people who are not getting sufficient nutrients to concentrate. Another piece in a troubling puzzle. I talked to Abby Lucas, a drama and English teacher who witnessed the effects of the lockdowns and knows how important creativity is to help restore what was lost. Abby runs a school drama club voluntarily, after mandatory hours, which has been popular. When I met her, I had not long since read Sir Ken Robinson's eye-opening case studies of dance, of the phenomenal reformative and generative capabilities of the art form for all who partook, increased engagement in their broader life and studies, improvements across all areas of study, better tolerance and heightened confidence. It seemed to me that drama had to offer benefits and outlets every bit as essential. Abby says, the state we're in at the moment, the way the kids are behaving, it's really worrying. She oozes the same concern I've seen in every teacher I've met. COVID hasn't helped. Young people don't socialise properly anymore. They don't know how to interact in the way you'd expect kids 5 years ago to interact, she says. In terms of respect, speaking to adults and speaking to each other, they have no boundaries of politeness and niceness. It's a real problem. It's all up the country, not just in my school. It means we have so many kids who are really tough to teach, who just cannot sit in a class, listen and engage. A massive number of kids are getting sent out of multiple lessons each day. Year 7 and Year 8, so those aged between 11 and 15, are most affected. Fight behaviour and mob mentality. It's scary. I think kids have lost resilience, and I think that's because of COVID. They were shut away and not exposed to new situations and people, so they have lost the ability to adapt. There's not much initiative. The majority of the kids at my school come from tumultuous home lives. That's where the arts need to come in. The space of drama enables them to direct all that energy to learn social skills. I love my drama lessons. I don't have a curriculum at the moment. I am completely free because nobody seems to care. I only teach one year group and they only get it once every 2 weeks. It's not enough. The kids are so energised in that lesson, as am I. It's hard to hear this and see it as anything other than kids being played as pawns in someone else's game. As a father, I make it a priority to ensure that my children have the space to think for themselves, the tools to develop their personalities with freedom, and the support to pursue their own interests and passions. I fear school will fail them on this front. I have so many issues with what's on the curriculum and feel so restricted as a teacher and don't understand why this massive chunk group of children are being left behind, says Abby. Her eyes are wide and she's animated, angered. Yet she must exist in an asphyxiating model that creates problems in the lives of children that people like Jen Lucas must then try to undo. I feel like these kids are being raised to be completely subservient, Abby tells me. I want to give them a different perspective. I started a drama club. The school didn't have one. To me, that's insane. We have a studio, a stage, and all the equipment, but no club. At first, some of my drama students see me as their English teacher and don't understand. But then it flips, and they get into it. They're moving around, doing it, and I see they should be doing this all week. Once a week at least, they need to be on their feet, coming up with ideas, being creative, allowed to express themselves. They're bloody teenagers. They need to be not sat in rows behind desks in classrooms. I can't stand it. Before I met Abby to discuss drama and performance in depth, we got talking about it by chance in a pub. She'd mentioned teaching drama and said many of her students could be abrasive because of their background. I told her about Dance United, a programme that uses dance to work with kids in the criminal justice system. With this in mind, I asked how this kind of individual responds to drama. When she exclaimed, "They bloody love it," I just smiled. Stereotypes and misconceptions still have most people believing that rowdy teenage boys and drama have no place in the same room, but it couldn't be further from the truth. Abby speaks of the apprehension, particularly among groups of boys. Within the context of drama, she'll create scenarios in which they can throw or stand on chairs, in character, to show them that self-expression in the appropriate arena can take on any form. When the thing they're not expected to do is the right thing to do, that's when they drop their boundaries and are free, laughs Abby. They don't have good outlets to just let themselves be, to get out all those raw energies. They have PE lessons, but it's not quite the same. I start my lessons with vocal exercises, screams, shouts. I feel bad for the maths teachers upstairs. I taught Year 8 students drama, and they started one lesson off showing them narration in Disney movies. I explained its place, where they might see it elsewhere, on Netflix films or shows, for example. Then they better understand its role, and we begin narration exercises for the things they're performing in class. Abby hits upon real-world context. Great teachers afforded the time to understand individuals, understand the importance of contextualising a topic in a way that resonates with the lives of their students. To start, I'll stand in the middle of a circle and look at every one of them, and I can see the focus, see them listening to my every word, and I love it. They're so engaged. The big thing I see is that the kids who are the most problematic in normal lessons, when they have to sit in front of a screen and listen for an hour, they come alive and shine in drama. The naughty kids in particular have confidence in themselves. They feel they can do anything because they rule the school anyway. When you direct that natural confidence in a positive setting, it becomes a much more powerful thing. I have one kid who can hardly stay in any lesson at the moment. It's so difficult to keep her in classes, but she stays in my drama class every time. She's there, on the bell, stood there, listening, responding. Abby questions why a child lacking in social or communication skills who cannot apply themselves is not put in an intense drama class, the same way a child who is behind in literacy will be put into intense reading classes and taught to write. Let them explore their own space, at their own pace, in their own time. That's what I want the kids to keep going with, because they don't have that in so much of their lives at the moment, and they're so bloody brilliant when they come out of their shells. You can see they're not looking at what is in the room, but what is got is grey, after all, And, in a dog-eat-dog capitalist system, this can drain the life out of a person. Sport is full of incredible stories of community, creativity, and big dreams as channels for frenetic energy found in young people. Ben Ryan, the former England men's Rugby 7 coach, left the post and went on to win Olympic gold with the Fiji men's Rugby 7s team at the 2016 Rio Olympic Games in one of sport's great stories. Ben had grown disillusioned with an increasing number of external constraints that hampered the pure enjoyment fundamental to the sport of rugby. Something I felt reflected big mistakes I saw in society at large. Liability and bureaucracy trumping common sense and care every time. He felt that fun was the most important aspect of the game, and while he understood the bigger picture of running the RFU, Twickenham's increasing emphasis on meetings, data, hierarchy and bureaucratic interference made him question his own love of the sport. Ben recognises the importance of the freedom of maverick players in sport, the ones prepared to try something different, to take a chance. Even at elite level, they often rub superiors the wrong way because they don't fit into the established mould. He felt that deep down, some coaches struggled with the realisation that these players knew more than they did, and the required removal of ego to get the most out of their abilities. I began working with Ben in 2010 while he was still coaching England. After his Fiji adventure, he wrote in his book, Seven's Heaven, about the need for guardrails for this type of maverick. A simple framework to ensure consistency, learning and development, but also leaving plenty of room for flair, experimentation and, above all, enjoyment so creativity can flow. All those times when I felt most energised, the revelatory freedom of walking out of school and into art college, the joy of trust placed in me by a more experienced creative director, these were guardrails, and it is these that will ensure there is a structure to the creativity, structure built to reflect the real-world circumstances which await once the training is complete. No child is ready for full autonomy, but creativity is a raw energy and benefits from subtle direction in tune with the individual's character. Different guardrails are, at times, needed for different individuals. Ben shared his story with me on the Creative Condition podcast. I'd gone from playing professional rugby, suffering an injury, to supply teaching at Cardinal Wiseman, the then third biggest comprehensive school in central London. Then I was asked to go to St Edward's, a big boarding school in Oxford, the complete opposite. For the first 2 years, I actually taught art while setting up a PE department. In PE, as long as the kids were behaving and the teams were doing well, I was left to do my own thing. The freedom to get the best out of me as a young coach. In this instance, Ben had his own guardrails in place, namely the national curriculum and student progression requirements, but his lack of controlling superior paid off. After teaching, Ben went on to coach England before accepting the vacant Fiji National Rugby 7's coaching post, where he found himself with a little more freedom than he might have liked. The Fijian RFU had gone bust when he arrived. His boss was a military dictator, and there was no training base, and he did not see a contract or pay for some time. But he fell in love with the energy and spirit of his players and adapted much the way he had in his teaching days. Despite unthinkable roadblocks at every turn, including the unavailability of one key player because a witch doctor had used black magic to put a curse on his legs, his creativity flourished. This, it seems, was contagious and laid the foundations of unity and commitment which would come to characterise a great underdog story ending with Olympic gold. The story of Jerry Tuwai perhaps best illustrates Ben Ryan's guardrails method of providing psychological safety, autonomy, status, belief, purpose, and a safe space to express concerns, all great creativity nutrients. In my early days coaching Fiji, I travelled around the country and would watch lots of tournaments, he tells me. There was this kid called Jerry Tuwai playing in one tournament. When he had the ball, it was all about fun, doing things outrageously, showing great footwork and vision. He was ridiculous. When there was hard work to be done, the need to defend, there was no chance. You'd see him walking around, hands in pockets, waiting for someone to get the ball back to him. It was the same in training. I had the boys in the national team training on the steep Sigatoka sand dunes. I'd brought Jerry back into the setup. Jerry had previously been exiled for the same attitude to hard work, because I saw he had something nobody else did. At the bottom of the dunes, I caught Jerry hiding in the bushes, so I said, "Right, let me drive you home and have Talanoa," which is clear and transparent dialogue in Fijian culture, with your mum and dad to see if we can help you become your best version. Jerry lived in a settlement in Suva. It's not all sand, sunshine and coconut trees in Fiji. There are not many dangerous parts, but where he lived was. I remember Jerry showing some journalists the scars on the bottom of his feet when they'd suggested it must have been nice growing up playing rugby on the sand. He told them he trained and learned on a traffic roundabout. His home had no electricity and no running water. I told his parents the need for consistent behaviours to support his talent. His parents told me he left school at 14 and he went to dive for fish with his dad. He would spear them, then spend all day selling them on the side of the road. So I knew he wasn't afraid to work hard. He hadn't connected the benefit of training to his performing. His mum told me that when he was 16, he told his parents that his dream was to be a rugby player. Instead of telling him to continue fishing and providing for the family, they went without food for 1 week and used the saved money to buy him the cheapest pair of football boots from the only sports shop in Suva. They sat him down, gave him the left boot and told him that this was his knife, the right his fork, and that these were what he was going to use to provide. They backed his dream, gave him his why, and he had knife and fork written on the bottom of his boots when he played in the Olympic final. Ben glows when he tells his story. Jerry Tuwai became one of the greatest, most innovative, agile, attacking rugby players on the planet, in part because he benefited from the patience, support and mentorship required for his on-pitch creativity to blossom. During a conversation with Happy Mondays frontman Shaun Ryder, I asked him about the role of Tony Wilson, who signed the band to Factory Records, and, as he talks, I begin to see the importance of those same guardrails in his story and how he was able to thrive. I left school early. There were no special needs back then, even though I was clearly dyslexic, Shaun tells me. We'd hang around Phil Sachs's market stall, and through his connection to Tony Wilson, Mike Pickering and Rob Gretton, we ended up making vinyl albums on Factory Records way too soon, learning on the job. Shaun speaks about the double-edged sword of working with professional, polished musicians, telling me how it could be easy, thanks to their mastery, but also less creative because he had to be so precise. He says, Tony Wilson loved how we acted, the way we looked and gave us the space and support to learn. We were more of a little gang. He saw an art in that because we certainly weren't musicians. We made money elsewhere. We just did the music and left the making money part out. Money is a huge obstacle. In lean economic times, those least well off struggle to access expensive schools and, while not without exceptions, tend to lack the same support middle class kids benefit from. Despite this, there are upsides. Working class kids can be more self-sufficient and street smart, but, for the reasons highlighted earlier, these smarts can be chaotic and run the risk of misdirection. Surely it costs less to subsidise such activities in youth services than it does to fund prisons and secure children's homes, while preparing young people for more well-oiled society. Stephanie Powell-Baxter is a dancer and choreographer. She works on Strictly Come Dancing, as well as various major film productions and London West End musicals. Her father worked away, and Stephanie was one of 3 siblings, so her mother had to land on one affordable hobby for all. Dancing was just a cheap hobby, muses Stephanie. Beginning in a church hall, she worked her way up through the ranks and chose ballroom dancing in a dedicated school from the age of 11. It fell to Stephanie to take the lead from there. My mum said, "If you want to go, you can phone up and organise your own lessons." So I did. I picked up the phone and the yellow pages and circled all of the different dance schools I could find and asked where and how much they were. This illustrates something underappreciated in clubs, societies and healthy subcultures for young people. Soft skills, independence and sensitivity to a whole range of scenarios that are not usually found in the home or in traditional school lesson structures. Also, enablers of creativity. From here, she had to navigate bus rides to Southampton, where the dance school was located. The big difference between Stephanie and the children who did not use their smarts this way was parental support and guidance. When Abby Lucas expressed her fears of the damage COVID-19 lockdowns could have had on the mental health and independence of young people, I wondered where was the reactionary upsurge in dance, drama, sport and art? The socially inclusive activities and space to come together and heal. Surely these poor young people who'd seen a chunk of their freedom erased in their formative years would have had a lot of aggression, dismay and anxiety to express. Regardless of ability or likelihood of success in the field, these structured activities facilitate maturity, personal growth and collaboration under the guidance of adults who are not direct family members. The big misconception is that these other forms of intelligence, these educational outliers, construction, trades, performing arts are places to send the disruptors and kids who cannot pass tests and become unmanageable or unlikely to pass memory-based tests. There's a tendency to look at a field like dance and dissuade young people from participation owing to the low percentage of people who will excel and continue on to a career in the profession. But we do not challenge maths or science in the same way, despite equally low numbers who will lead careers with the skills acquired in those subjects. Stephanie shone on both academic and artistic fronts and had to fight her corner to choose the route considered riskier. She eventually went on to study at Bird College, an elite performance college in Sidcup, where she completed a BA Honours degree in dance and theatre performance. I did very well in my exams, considering I was somebody who spent most of my time practicing dancing and not revising, she says. I came out with 9 A's and a B, and that wasn't my focus. My school offered drama and theatre studies at both GCSE and A-level. There was no dance GCSE, so I chose PE because dance was a part of that. I wrote my university dissertation about dance intelligence and different types of coordination you need and don't need to be a dancer. I am incredibly kinesthetically aware of my own body in space, of other bodies in proximity to me, so we can hold formations and patterns and change in the blink of an eye. But if you give me something in hand and something to hit with it, I've got no coordination at all. So I looked into a lot of studies for that, and there's a certain type of intelligence that's needed for dance and solo sports, like gymnastics, that you wouldn't need for other sports. I forged really strong relationships with my dance friends. You practice together, you rehearse together, and you express together. There's no judgment. You learn a syllabus, and there's a correct way to do that syllabus, but within that, there's artistry. Everyone will express that slightly differently. It's just a really wonderful place to be where there's acceptance. There is a glowing thread running through Bike Storms, Jerry Tawais growing into his role as a flair attacking asset in the Fiji Rugby Sevens team, the children finding their feet after damaging early life adversity in Jen Lucas's secure children's home, Abby Lucas's drama students, and both Shane Gall and Stephanie Powell-Baxter's paths, despite the varying levels of trouble and restrictions. This thread is the critical role of shared belonging and mentors. It can take time, but ultimately, purpose and community dissolve naughtiness, or even, in the case of Stephanie, who did not find herself in trouble, prevent unexpressed, stifled emotions from turning to dark energy, converting them instead into creative fuel. While the population genie cannot be put back in the bottle, we can learn a lot from our species' history and primitive societies. Certain human needs are innate and timeless. Pre-agricultural peoples relied upon the senses much more than we need to today. But our neglect, our disconnect from our environment, comes at a cost, and I believe we are starting to see it in what some predict will become a mental health pandemic. Pre-agricultural peoples also communicated in a wider range of methods, often visually. Their lifestyles were said to have been more leisurely, with much greater emphasis placed upon creativity and self-expression. It's hard to argue that the balance of a positive common pursuit and enough room for individuality and creativity to develop, with immediate feedback from more experienced people to shape it, is anything but essential in any era. We have it in the professional design community. Those nerds, hunched over tiny warriors in the Warhammer store, they bask in it. Shane's gaming and tech skills brought him new friendship groups comprised of like-minded people through shared passions and identity armour to enter new arenas. Self-identity is massive, says Shaz, a workshop leader supporting young people in London. What are you good at? What are you not good at? You might be good at 10 things. Perhaps there's only one that you want to do every day. Exposing them to things they haven't been exposed to before. That way, they can make better decisions about their direction for themselves. Young people may not have anyone supporting or guiding them, nobody to teach them a thinking process that says, hold on a minute, I can do that. Failure is not a negative. We're learning all the time. It's important to empower kids to take risks. There are a lot of people out there unable to express themselves creatively, just struggling in 9-to-5 jobs, feeling unhappy and oppressed. I don't like the idea of seeing young people struggle, being unhappy, when all they want to do is create. I say to the young boys on the street corner that if you can succeed as an entrepreneur selling drugs, then you can succeed by putting your mind to selling something that's not detrimental to the next person. I'm sick and tired of hearing people write young people off as a loss. Well, you know what? They're our future. Police officers, doctors, politicians, and they're going to be a better future because they're our diversifiers. Shaz and Mac Ferrari are two of our modern day shepherds. rounding up the people their guardians forgot, the ones our schools and our governing bodies wash their hands of and throw to the criminal justice system. Without these mentors, many of the broken young people have nobody to help them pull the pieces back together, and the shards are sharp. These shards can draw blood from other people who encounter them. Frustration does two things to young people, Shaz explains. Some young people in schools push through it, but others, if they feel they are not being heard, will think, fuck it, I might as well not be here. It doesn't take a lot to change that. When I sit and listen to talk to the people in my workshops, they look surprised by the attention. It's simple skills that too many never encounter. Just because we are the older generation does not mean we know more. I don't know one older person who respects the grime music scene, for example. It's aggressive, but it's an expression of what they want. The oppression they have to suffer all around is unbelievable. It has to come out somewhere. I look for these cannonball kids in my children's nursery, on the streets, and see only valuable indicators of what might be, their creativity and indicators of something beautiful coming out of them. That could light up their lives and benefit the rest of us. But met by either screaming silence, disapproval, or bellowing antagonists. These narrow-minded people who should be doing what Shaz and Mac have dedicated their lives to. I'm the class representative for my son's class at the moment, says Stephanie. I went on a trip with them recently. Within that class, there are 27 of them. I would say 7 of them displayed what you would say is challenging behaviour. But those children were so dynamic and expressive. Some of them are funny, and you can't laugh. There's something inside them that makes you think that if the education was different, maybe you'd unlock something within them. I wouldn't say I'm introverted, but I was an incredibly shy child. My hobbies were riding my bike to the library and reading. Or reading books to a friend of mine who was from a very disadvantaged background who couldn't read very well. I would read the point horror books to her. Dance actually allowed me to have this alter ego that I didn't feel comfortable with having within a social environment. There's something really powerful about the non-verbal, because sometimes as a child or a young adult, you can't always find the words. You can't pinpoint what's making you feel a certain way. But to be able to put on a piece of music that maybe resonates with you and dance it out, to not have to use words is incredible. It's frustrating in equal measure that we are failing to provide this valuable framework for disadvantaged young people to find direction. But in redeeming fashion, heartening to see many people and organisations fighting for wider recognition of the power of naughty. Conversion, not correction, is a mantra I want to fight for. I suppose the question is, can we, as a society, be bothered to acknowledge, fund, or take time to address the root cause? Or is it easier? Does it better serve your agenda to stick with naughty and crack down on it? If we can, then there is a hotbed of talent, of fighters, of creative change makers right underneath our feet. Thank you very much for listening, guys. That is the Dirty Energy chapter 32 from the Creative Condition book, which you can get your paperback from now at bentalentwriter.com/shop, or you can pick it up on Amazon Kindle if you're an e-reader. I'm going to be putting together the audiobook soon. I quite enjoyed reading these chapters. What did you think? Can I narrate? I don't know. Nice one. Thank you for listening. Do go back and check out Professor Carl Chin on last week's episode for some context on this whole conversation around the working class and the class system in the arts. Big passionate topic of mine that I want to contribute towards. I know that Gush Monday, previous guest on this show and founder of Bulletproof Agency, is doing work in schools to help reach certain minority communities, reach everyone, but there's certain cultures where parents are more strict on prestige and, being seen to have a career that is successful. So doctors and lawyers and things that do not see the value in creativity. And Gush wants to go in there and say, look, you can have a well-paying, respected career as a creative director or as a, person in an agency or as an artist, and help to get those kids exposed to the creative industry. And I think that's great. So I'd love to help him with that. And it's kind of part of the drive of what I'm doing here on this show. So go back and check out the archive. If you're a new listener, there's loads to get your teeth into, but most of it, in fact, nearly all of it, is not time sensitive. It's all thematic, nuts and bolts of creativity. I now have the Anatomy of Creativity map, which I'm going to make available for sale at bentalentwriter.com/shop on the website. and pick that up to give yourself some structure and some framework in understanding your creativity. And I'm going to be launching my workshop and coaching model coming up soon as well. This thing is taking on a head of steam and some momentum now, which is really exciting. So big thank you to the sponsors, illustrationx.com and the Ukrainian Institute. Go and check them out now. Both wonderful show partners. I am looking out for new sponsors for the show too, so if that's of interest, get in touch and we'll form a partnership. Very, very exciting times here for the Creative Condition. Cheers for all the lovely feedback, by the way, on the Carl Chin episode. That was really heartwarming, and great to connect with so many other people who feel the same way I do about being from working class backgrounds and how we need better integration of the classes in the arts for the greater benefit for all of us. So there you have it. Cheers, guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you as ever to Dirty Freud for the music beds for the show, and everyone who listens. If you do get the chance to leave a little subscription, a rating or a review on your chosen platform, be it Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever else, I would be massively grateful. It supports the cause. It's free to do. It takes only a few seconds. Thank you, guys. Take care. Have an awesome week. See you later.